Far to the north, in the frozen reaches of Scandinavia, lies a village that doesn't appear on any map. It's called Julheim, a place shrouded in mystery and whispered rumors. Few people even know it exists, and those who do speak of it only in hushed tones. Julheim, they say, is a village frozen in time, where Christmas isn't a celebration of joy but a ritual of survival. It was precisely this reputation that drew a group of 4 documentary filmmakers to the remote settlement. They weren't the first outsiders to visit, but they might be the last. The crew consisted of Marcus, the director, Elena, the historian, Jake, the cameraman, and Sophie, the sound technician. They had heard of Julheim's bizarre Christmas customs and decided to document the village's annual Yule festival, hoping to uncover the truth behind its strange traditions. Their journey began on December 18th, with a chartered snowmobile ride deep into the wilderness. As they approached the village, the first signs of unease crept in. Towering, ancient wooden carvings of Father Christmas lined the path, their faces distorted into twisted, almost grotesque smiles. When they arrived, the villagers greeted them warmly, too warmly. Their smiles were wide, but their eyes lacked warmth, as if they were performing hospitality rather than feeling it. The village itself was unsettling. Small wooden cottages with ancient decorations, and a massive square in the center dominated by a towering effigy of Father Christmas. Unlike the jolly Santa of Western traditions, this figure was unervingly lifelike, with dark, hollow eyes and a long, tattered red robe. The crew exchanged uneasy glances but said nothing. The head of the village, an elderly man named Eric, welcomed them with a heavy accent. "You have come at the perfect time," he said. "Tomorrow night we celebrate your father's arrival. You will see our true traditions." He smiled, his yellowed teeth glinting in the lantern light. "But you must follow our rules. Do not leave your cabin after dark. And whatever you do, do not enter the forest." The first night was uneventful, though the crew struggled to sleep. Strange sounds echoed through the night, low chanting, the faint jingle of bells, and what sounded like distant laughter carried on the icy wind. Jake joked nervously, maybe Santa's real after all, but no one laughed. In the morning, they discovered unsettling symbols carved into the trees around their cabin. Elena, the historian, identified them as runes, but their meaning was unclear. "Protection? Sacrifice?" she muttered, brushing her fingers over the carvings. As the day passed, the villagers became increasingly evasive. When asked about the effigy or the chanting, they would simply say, "Your father watches over us." Marcus pushed for more answers, but Eric grew angry. "Some things are not meant to be questioned," he snapped. "You are here to observe, not interfere." The crew decided to stay in the village square that evening to document the festival preparations. As night fell, the villagers gathered around the effigy, lighting torches and chanting in an ancient language. The air grew heavy, and a sense of unease settled over the group. Suddenly, the chanting stopped, and Eric stepped forward. "The time has come," he announced. "Your father will choose." As the villagers continued their ritual, the temperature seemed to drop, and the wind howled through the square. Then the bells began to ring, not the cheerful chimes of Christmas, but deep, resonant tones that seemed to vibrate through the ground. The villagers fell silent, their heads bowed. From the forest, a figure emerged. At first, it seemed like a man in a Santa suit, but as he drew closer, the truth became horrifyingly clear. His proportions were wrong, too tall, his arms unnaturally long, and his face obscured by a hood. In one hand, he held a long staff topped with a bell. In the other, a sack that writhed and moved as if something alive was inside. The crew froze, their cameras capturing the scene, unable to believe what they were seeing. "Is this part of the festival?" Sophie whispered. I don't think so," Marcus replied, his voice trembling. The figure stopped in front of the effigy and let out a guttural laugh that seemed to echo through the village. Then he turned his hollow gaze toward the crew. Panic set in. Marcus whispered for the crew to retreat, but before they could move, the figure began to approach them. Eric stepped forward, blocking its path. "They are not part of the offering," he shouted. The figure paused, its head tilting as if considering Eric's words. Without warning, it raised its staff and brought it down with a deafening clang. Eric collapsed, his body convulsing before going still. The villagers didn't react. Instead, they turned to the crew with blank, unfeeling expressions. The filmmakers ran, abandoning their equipment and fleeing toward the cabin. Behind them, the bells rang louder, closer. They locked the door, barricading it with furniture, but the sounds didn't stop. Chanting, laughter, and the steady jingle of bells surrounded the cabin. Then came the scratching at the windows, the deep voice calling their names. Marcus, Elena, Jake, Sophie. The next morning, the villagers found the cabin empty. The crew was gone, but their cameras remained, frozen in the snow. When authorities reviewed the footage weeks later, they saw the final moments. The crew huddled together in terror, the door splintering open, and the figure stepping inside. The screen went black, but the audio remained. Bells, screams, and finally, laughter.